What if this story didn't start in July at all? What if the car, the calendar, and a single photograph were quietly telling the truth months earlier while everyone was still watching the wrong week? The deeper you go, the more the timestamps fight back, and the case around Celeste stops feeling random. It starts to feel scheduled. The first crack in everything you thought you knew is a date that shouldn't be that important and yet changes the entire tone of this story. January 2nd, 2025. Not summer, not late July. January 2nd. A private investigator hired by the owner of the Hollywood Hills home connected to the singer D4vd says that's the last date he has that verifiably shows Celeste alive. Not a text, not a DM, a photograph. And here's the detail that sticks like a splinter. The image wasn't pulled from her phone. It was recovered from a camera left behind at the property. After that, the line goes quiet. No verified images, no confirmed sightings, just a string of messages that could have been anyone behind the screen. If that's right, then the summer chatter wasn't the beginning, it was the aftermath. From there, the car becomes a clock. You don't even need a confession when you have movement. According to public reporting and the investigators' interviews, the Tesla didn't just appear out of nowhere in late July. It had been seen around the neighborhood as far back as May, shifting spaces, settling, biding time. Then, in late July, it was placed in the final spot. A tidy little corner where the ticket would come, the tow would follow, and the discovery would wait at the end of the chain. Weeks later, on September 8th after the tow, the smell, and the sickening realization, the truth made itself known in the worst possible way. Police say the teen had likely been gone for weeks. The medical examiner wasn't ready to call cause or manner. The case remained a death investigation, but the car had already spoken in the only language it knows: dates, distances, and delays. That's where the clean edges end and the messy human guesses begin. Online sleuths fixated on a detail that feels too small to matter until it doesn't. Clothing, parties, selfies, backstage shots, captions people barely read, the stuff we all post without thinking. The investigator has said the neighborhood is thick with cameras and that it's very clear who placed the Tesla where it was ultimately towed, but he hasn't publicly named that person. The internet, predictably, tried anyway. They latched onto a friend often seen with the singer, sometimes labeled Neo, pointing to bold colors and numbers on shirts, comparing them to blurred shapes in the surveillance frame. Are those real matches or just people wanting patterns where there might be coincidence? That's the problem with silhouettes. If you stare long enough, they start to look like whoever you're already suspicious of. For now, it's just talk, not law. The PI's on the record line remains simple. The footage exists, the identity is very clear, and it lives with detectives. Inside the house, the story gets colder. The same investigator has publicly said he found items left behind after the warrant service, the kind of materials people buy for normal reasons, but that take on a darker flavor in the wrong context. Heavy bags, industrial cleaning agents, and other things he described as really sadistic stuff. His caveat matters. Purchases alone aren't proof of anything. You can buy bleach to clean a kitchen. You can buy bags to move house. Legally, it's about how and whether those items connect to anything forensic. Still, the words linger because the discovery in the car reframes everything at the property. It makes even ordinary supplies feel like they're staring back at you. Police, for their part, have kept it tight. Electronics seized, labs pending. Toxicology can take time. The speed of the internet has a hard time accepting that science moves slowly on purpose. And that brings us to the gap. 7 months is an ocean. If the last real image sits at the beginning of January and the car is staged in late July, then the easy story, the one that fits into a headline, won't survive. You'll hear talk about a second place to stay, a streaming house, a downtown crash pad, or a short-term lease with someone else's name on it. You'll see people stitch together interiors from clips, match curtains, count tiles, and argue over doorknobs like they're fingerprints. That's what happens when official pages stay blank. People start writing in the margins. Some say a red Tesla showed up as a rental early in the year and ask whether that matters. Others say it's noise. It might be everything. It might be nothing. What we know for sure is narrow. The car that would later hold the remains was registered to the singer. It was left in late July, it was found in September, and the lab clock is still ticking. Everything else is an if, a maybe, or a not yet. There's a side chapter people keep whispering about because it feels like a movie scene, even if it's just life being messy. A late-night noise complaint, hours of delay, lights going from too loud to too quiet, the kind of small municipal hiccup that, in hindsight, looks bigger than it was. The lesson isn't that this proves anything, it's that timing matters, and a lot can vanish between a phone call and a knock on the door. In cases like this, the story tends to congeal around the moments we can pin to a clock. Every minute that slips away becomes a place for rumor to hide. When the official record is slow or incomplete, people fill it with playlists, live stream echoes, and whatever a neighbor thinks they smelled that night. It's human. It's also why detectives guard timelines like they're evidence, because they are. Meanwhile, the public theater never stops. There are clips from a tour bus. There are photos from parties. There are shirts with loud words and captions that read differently now. There are screenshots. There are DMS. There are rumors about accounts wiped clean, then screenshots proving they weren't. There are fans who will forgive anything and others who will forgive nothing. The only universal feeling is whiplash. Seeing someone post like life's a joke while a case like this sits in the background. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Optics aren't evidence. Calm isn't innocence. Panic isn't guilt. Social media is a stage, not a courtroom. The police have said what they can say. Lab work, active investigation, resources committed. At the same time, they haven't named a suspect, and they haven't filed charges. That vacuum is hard for people who want the world to make sense by the end of a scroll. So what is actually known? This part is mercilessly short. The remains were found on September 8th in a towed Tesla registered to the singer. The teen had likely been gone for weeks. The cause and manner are pending. The case is officially a death investigation. The investigator hired by the homeowner says the last verified image is January 2nd. The car was parked in its final spot late July, and there is surveillance that makes the final parking very clear, unnamed for the public. That's the spine of the timeline you can hold without burning your hands. Everything else sits in two buckets. Bucket 1, claims with public interviews behind them. The uncollected items, the surveillance montage, the January photo anchor. Bucket 2, the internet's collage. Outfit matches, second addresses, second vehicles, and theories about who typed which messages months after the last photo. Bucket 1 won't satisfy your curiosity. Bucket 2 might satisfy it too much. The truth probably lives somewhere in between, waiting for the lab reports, the digital breadcrumbs, and the boring paperwork that real cases are made of. But even with all the fog, one idea keeps surfacing every time you stack the dates. This didn't feel chaotic. Chaos is messy and loud. This looked planned, not necessarily brilliant, not necessarily careful, but planned enough that time kept working in someone's favor. The car was placed, the tour bus left, the tow was predictable, discovery was inevitable, but delayed. If you read the story strictly as a sequence of logistics, it's chilling because logistics don't have feelings. They just run. And that's the part that makes people angry. Not only the loss, which is already unbearable, but the performance around it. The shows, the posts, the practiced normal. You see that and start reading disrespect into everything. You want it to mean something you can point to. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. What it definitely does is poison the room. People pick sides. People stop listening. People decide they know who parked the car without waiting to hear the tape. The investigator says he's already shared his materials with detectives. The police say they're still working. That disconnect between what the public thinks it sees and what prosecutors can actually file is the longest part of any case. So where does that leave us? With time, again. With a photo on January 2nd that narrows the front end. With late July that hardens the middle. With September 8th that locks the end. With uncollected items photographed and handed off. With a neighborhood that records everything and a PI who says the answer to who parked it is already on a screen somewhere. With a lab that will take as long as it takes. With a family and a name that should never get lost in the noise, even when the trending tab moves on. Here's my ask if you've watched this far. Keep your curiosity, but keep your patience too. Rumors can sprint, evidence has to walk. If and when officials lay out the theory of how the remains ended up in that car, a lot of scattered pieces will click at once and it'll seem obvious in hindsight. Until then, the only honest way to hold this story is tightly around the facts and loosely around the rest. If you think accountability should follow time, drop your thoughts below, respectfully, and tell me which moment in this timeline you think matters most. The last verified photo, the parking in late July, or the final discovery in September. I'm reading, and I'll continue following every vetted update as it lands. If this helped you see the case more clearly and cut through the noise, share it so Celeste's name doesn't get swallowed by the next viral headline. And if you want me to keep building out the forensics first timeline as labs report back, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter.